In 8th grade, we got a trip out of state for a few days for graduating from middle school. I had no friends in middle school, and I knew if you wanted to go, you had to bunk with some classmates in a hotel room. I said I wasn't going. I knew I didn't have any social standing to go. But my teachers and family kept egging me on, telling me that if I didn't go, I would regret it. Personally, I was much more interested in talking to my online boyfriend at the time. But I caved and agreed to go, and they grouped me up with some of the more popular boys. The first day was uneventful, and I mostly wandered around at the back of the group, alone, and bought a fruit smoothie from the shopping center we stopped in. But night came and it was revealed that I would be joining their hotel room. Well, they didn't take too kindly to that and spent the night tormenting me. Your run-of-the-mill bully stuff. Then one pissed in a bottle and tossed it on me and my cot, so I didn't sleep at all that night. I just sat in a chair and thought about how unwanted I was and how I didn't fit in at all. And I started to feel sick. The next day, it all came crashing down. The boys got caught bragging about the event in an elevator, and the teacher investigated. Really, I just wanted to keep my head down, and, well, the truth came out. The whole class basically found out. The boys got in trouble, and the one that pissed in the bottle had his parents called, and they had to drive across state lines to pick him up. They also destroyed the hotel room while throwing stuff at me. Yodels were smeared on the wall and ceiling, a mirror was broken, and the AC unit was busted. My classmates were not happy with me since I had been seen as the cause of their friends getting in trouble. The nurse was nice enough to give me her private hotel room, but sadly, I wasn't allowed to hide in it. Doubly so because the fruit smoothie had me shitting and vomiting like crazy at this point. We visited the Amish where the school admins demanded that I eat despite telling them I didn't feel well. The usual, "You are just hungry, you should eat." So I ate the Amish food and then promptly hurled it across the hallway on the way out in front of the entire class. I spent the rest of the trip trying to stay isolated, but one nice boy tried to keep me company. When I got home, I found out that my internet boyfriend was a cyber predator who revealed himself, then promptly dumped me. The school pressed punishment for the now infamous Philadelphia incident and made some classmates write apology letters to me, though I just wanted to move on. I guess I got lucky my parents didn't press charges in that vein either. I ended up skipping out on the other 2 end of middle school field trips. Our school ended up getting blacklisted by the hotel, and from what I hear, they stopped doing big out-of-state 8th grade field trips after our class. In part because of my experience, but also because of several others. My classmates apparently made it a general habit to destroy their hotel room, and the school had to pay a bunch of damages, and so on. It was a shit show. I was just a big gossip story. Some silver lining, I have a relatable story for all those suffering from bullying and generally being an outcast. I can report I made a lot of friends after middle school, and that was really the low point of my youth. And I got to tell my parents, "I told you so," and who doesn't enjoy a bit of that when they're young teens? Field trip to the haunted Indian farm. This incident took place somewhere back in 2015 when I was still struggling through middle school and trying to adapt to my new surroundings. I had only recently moved to Pune, a mid-sized metropolis in India where I still reside. I spent the last 13 years living in Dubai, where my parents moved as soon as I was born. My new school had planned an overnight field trip to a small city known as Baramati, famous for farms and dairy. The trip was supposed to give us an insight into the lives of farmers and their livelihoods. I was one of the most excited students in my class because I had never been on any sort of overnight trip before. This place looks like 5 people had been murdered here. I said this as soon as I got out of the bus. I stared into the dark at what looked like the place we were supposed to spend the night. I heard giggles from the girls at the back, but something felt truly odd about this place. Baramati is located some 130 kilometers from my school. After an exhausting day of traveling and checking boxes out of an itinerary, I was ready to chill out with my friends and get some sleep. But little did I know that what was waiting for me behind those big, creaky gates would still keep me up on most nights. When we walked in, I could tell that the place was a huge farmland. There were 2 large cement houses along with many small ones. There was also a large structure that served as a dining hall, and the rest was just farming area. After a light dinner and some board games, we were all instructed to head to our sleeping areas. A couple of us stayed up a bit later, just having random conversation, mostly about girls, but the rest had gone off to sleep at around midnight. Me, one of my classmates, Ankit and Ronak, and another friend from school were the only ones awake at this point. Ankit was famous in school for having the best horror stories. He belonged to a city that was well known for mysterious happenings, so it was only natural for him to have some experience in this subject. After a few minutes of usual talk, Ankit decided to recite one of his famous stories. Did you guys hear that? A few minutes into his bone-chilling story, Ankit says this with a cold look on his face. Ronak starts laughing and punches Ankit on his arm, but I know this dude, and I've never seen him look so lifeless. I looked around the room and found everything in order. Nothing was out of place. It was a long room with beds placed along the walls with ample space to walk to and from the beds. There was a washroom at the end of the room and windows at the far ends. No, shut up and listen. And we heard all right. It sounded like someone wearing gungros, a traditional Indian anklet with small bells that makes a specific kind of sound when one takes a step, was walking right outside our room. The sound of those footsteps was so subtle and perfect. I could hear it so clearly. My brain couldn't comprehend the signals it was receiving from my ears. At 3 a.m., somebody or something was walking right outside our room, pacing very calmly like it was an evening stroll at the park. Don't look outside, she'll kill you. My first thought was to look outside the window to see who this idiot was, but Ankit knew better. He told us that the person walking outside was a churl, a demonic creature resembling a woman. He explained that if we looked outside the window and caught her looking straight at us, we'd be dead on the spot. Ankit continued to explain that the churl would try to lure us into looking at her by calling us in distressed voices of the people we know. Ankit, come help me. I've lost my way. We heard from outside. At this point, I was too scared to move. It had been about 5 minutes since we started hearing the sounds of those gungros. It wasn't the time to screw around. We decided to wake up one of the chaperones in our room to let them know of this paranormal activity. If we wake them up, the voices will stop. I mean, wasn't that the point? We decided that it was the right thing to do. The chaperone didn't seem too happy about it, but as he saw our faces while we explained the situation, he felt we weren't kidding around. He picked up his torch and opened the door to check what was happening outside. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped. It was like there was nobody there in the first place, just like Ankit had told us. The chaperone told us that it's nothing to worry about and ordered us to go back to sleep. The 3 of us crammed into one bed together and tried to get as much sleep as possible. We woke up early the next day, clearly not getting enough sleep. As we walked outside, I noticed something I hadn't before. In the area between the 2 big houses, there was a small pedestal-like structure with a holy basil plant on top. I had missed it the other night. It looked odd, but I was so tired that I didn't pay much attention to it. I quickly got dressed and headed out for breakfast. At the dining hall, I overheard the girls talking about how one of them had got locked inside the washroom, while another fainted on the floor. One of the girls even told us that while they were playing the infamous Bloody Mary game, the lights in the room suddenly went off and they felt like someone was near them trying to touch them inappropriately. After I got back home that day, I did some research. I found that one of the Hindu castes that bury the dead place a basil plant on top of a pedestal in honor of the deceased. As I read these words, my face turned white. I remembered my friends gathering around that place, clicking selfies and fooling around. Those memories that were supposed to make me happy made me sick. I remember not eating for a week after I got back. I didn't even talk to Ankit or Ronak. I knew something was wrong with that place, and now it's there for everyone to see. The teachers didn't believe anything we told them, but I knew they never would. It's now been more than 6 years since that night at Baramati, but I still can't get that voice out of my head. Whenever I talk about this incident with my friends, I notice tears roll down their faces, tears of pure terror and shock. I don't know who or what was outside our door that night. I guess I'll never know, but what I do know is that what I felt that night was real and something that I will never forget. That voice has scarred me for life, and nothing I do can change that. We have a tale from Backpack Stories coming from a woman named Sue, a pseudonym to protect her identity. Sue went on a nature walk school trip when she was a kid. They were split into groups of 10 and walked with the teachers. The teachers talked about nature and the history of the area. The walk took place in a field and Sue had hung back. Then suddenly, Victorian-looking school children burst out of the trees laughing. They had a white glow all around them. One of them was a girl who said, "Hello, would you like to play?" But Sue was paralyzed with fear. She couldn't answer. The girl took her by the hand and went into the woods to a cave full of ghostly children. Sue said they brought her there to initiate her into their family. It was then that she decided to run. She didn't stop running until she reached her teacher, although she could still see the children in the trees. She was shivering with fear, but she knew she was safe now after returning to her group. Thanks for watching. Stay vigilant, friends.